There's a kind of tiredness that no amount of sleep can fix. You open your eyes in the morning, and before you even move, you're already tired. You go to work. You say all the right things. You answer every message with a polite smile. And on the surface, you look like you're functioning. But deep inside, there's a silence, a slow emptiness, something that's been with you for years. It's not just stress, not quite burnout. And no, it's not laziness. It's more like, I don't know how to keep living like this anymore. You tell yourself, maybe I just need a break. So you cancel plans, take time off, sleep in, unplug. But no matter how much rest you get, you still feel tired, because the real fatigue is not in your body, it's in your soul. And no one ever taught you how to rest that part of you. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But here's the thing. Your soul has been trying to speak, through the fatigue, through the numbness, through the quiet ache that no one else sees. This isn't laziness. This is what Jung called the exhaustion of someone who has lived too far from their self. You've been feeding your ego, but starving your soul. This video isn't a quick fix. There are no 5 steps to more energy, no promise of feeling better in 10 minutes. But if you've ever felt like you don't want to get out of the car when you get home, you've run out of energy to love, or you're quietly losing interest in your own life, then stay, because what you're about to hear may finally explain the kind of exhaustion that no doctor, no podcast, no self-help guru ever mentions. The problem isn't that you need to try harder. The problem is you've been trying to survive a life that doesn't feed your soul. It's not about doing more. It's about remembering who you are and how far you've drifted from it. If any part of this touched something true inside, you subscribe to this channel. The next parts will go deeper into this invisible tiredness you've been carrying for years, and why it was never your fault to begin with. And if today all you can do is leave a single dot in the comments, I'll understand. That dot is proof you're still here, still trying, still listening to the voice beneath the exhaustion. No matter how much you rest, you still wake up exhausted. Why? There's a kind of tiredness that goes beyond the body. It's not fixed by more sleep, or more water, or even more self-care. It's a fatigue that feels like fog in the bones, like weight in the heart, like silence in the soul. You wake up already defeated, as if the day began without asking if you were ready for it. And deep down, you know this isn't about being lazy. This isn't about being weak. It's something else entirely. Carl Jung believed that when you live too far away from yourself, the psyche begins to collapse. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly. Over time, you become a shell of routines, of roles, of the person you think others expect you to be. And what's left behind is not just tiredness, but an aching absence of vitality. You see, energy doesn't only come from food and rest. It comes from meaning, from soul, from alignment, from the feeling that your life is connected to something real inside you. When you abandon that, you don't just get tired. You begin to leak life. You pour your energy into tasks that don't fulfill you, into relationships that don't see you, into conversations where you edit yourself down to be digestible, to be accepted, to be enough. And every time you do a little more of, you disappears. You smile, but you're not happy. You function, but you don't feel alive. You're present, but not truly here. That's not just burnout. That's soul weariness. And it's not something the world knows how to treat, because the world only sees what you produce. It never asks how much of your soul it cost you. Carl Jung wrote about the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. It's useful, necessary even, but when the mask becomes our identity, we begin to suffocate beneath it. You start to feel like a stranger in your own life, like you're performing instead of living. And slowly, your energy vanishes. Not in a moment, but like a candle flickering out in a room no one noticed had gone cold. You weren't designed for this, to live disconnected from your inner world, to silence your true voice so others can be comfortable. The body is not just a machine, it's a mirror. And when it's tired in ways rest can't touch, it's often reflecting something deeper, a truth you've buried, a longing you've ignored. Maybe your fatigue isn't a problem to fix, but a message to listen to. Maybe it's your soul saying, I miss you. Not the version of you who shows up with a smile and a calendar full of obligations, but the one who dreams, the one who feels deeply, the one who doesn't want to keep pretending everything's fine. And this is where the healing begins. Not with another morning routine, not with another productivity hack, but with the courage to admit what's no longer working. With the courage to stop lying to yourself about the life you're living. Because behind that tiredness, there's a deeper intelligence, a knowing that you were meant for something more than just surviving the day. Carl Jung believed that when the psyche grows tired enough, it begins to call the soul back home. And it does this through discomfort, through fatigue, through that strange, quiet ache that tells you something has to change. Not out there, but in here. So instead of asking, how can I push through this tiredness? Maybe ask, what part of me have I abandoned? To keep everything else running, because your soul remembers the version of you that used to feel alive. And it's not too late to come back to them. What if the reason you're exhausted is because you've been fighting a war inside yourself and losing energy every day? Not all battles are visible. Some happen quietly within the silence of your own skin. You may not hear them, but you feel them. Tension in your shoulders, irritability over small things, a weight that has no name, yet drains you completely. This isn't just stress, it's the cost of inner conflict. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What you're feeling isn't weakness, it's the energetic price of suppressing your truth. The ego wants to be in control. It craves approval, success, and stability. But your shadow, the parts of you you've rejected, crave something else entirely. Freedom, authenticity, wholeness. When these two forces fight, you lose energy. Every single day. You may think you're just tired, but the truth is you're leaking life into a war you didn't even know you were fighting. You suppress your anger to be nice. You swallow your needs to avoid being a burden. You fake being okay because you don't know if anyone could handle your real truth. But that suppression has a cost, a spiritual one. Every moment you betray yourself to keep the peace, you drain your libido. Not in the sexual sense, but in Jung's original meaning, psychic energy, the fuel of the soul. That's why this tiredness won't go away, because it's not coming from your schedule. It's coming from your resistance. Resistance to what you feel. Resistance to what you want. Resistance to the parts of you that have been locked away just to keep you functional. And your soul is tired of functioning. It wants to feel. It wants to be whole. Jung believed that what we repress doesn't disappear. It becomes unconscious. It waits in the shadow not to destroy you, but to be acknowledged, integrated, brought into light. Your sadness, your rage, your longing, your unmet need to be seen. It's all still there. It's what's pulling at your energy from beneath the surface. And until you stop running from it, you'll keep waking up tired. You'll keep wondering why you have no passion, no motivation, no spark. Because the truth is, your fire isn't gone. It's just trapped underneath everything you've been afraid to feel. This is why shadow work matters. It's not a trendy phrase. It's the most important healing process you were never taught. Because until you face your shadow, you'll keep mistaking exhaustion for personality. You'll keep calling yourself lazy, when really, you've just been at war with yourself for far too long. But there's hope in this, because the very parts of you that have been exiled, they carry your energy. They carry your voice, your clarity, your power. And when you stop resisting them, they don't destroy you. They restore you. This is the paradox Jung understood so well. Your healing is in the place you're most afraid to go. So, if this message stirred something real in you, I want you to know you're not broken. You're just tired from carrying the weight of who you were never meant to be. There's another way to live, a deeper, truer way, and we're going to keep walking toward it together. Subscribe to this channel if you feel like your soul is asking for something more, because in the next parts, we'll go deeper into the inheritance you're still carrying and how your tiredness might not even be yours to begin with. Even if you don't have the words right now, just leave a dot in the comments. That dot tells me you're still here, still listening, still healing. Some of the tiredness you feel doesn't even belong to you. You might be carrying things that were never yours to begin with. The heaviness in your chest, the chronic tension in your neck, the ache behind your eyes. What if those aren't just symptoms? What if they're stories you never chose, but inherited? Carl Jung called this the influence of the personal and collective unconscious, that so much of what shapes us lies not in what we remember, but in what we've absorbed, silently, from family, from culture, from pain passed down like heirlooms. You weren't just born into a body, you were born into a field, a psychic field shaped by generations of unspoken grief, unmet needs, unresolved fears. And over time, that invisible weight becomes yours. Maybe your mother never taught you how to rest because no one ever let her rest. Maybe your father told you to push through it because that's how he survived his own war inside. Maybe you were told to be strong, to smile, to not make a scene. And now you wonder why your body collapses in private when no one is watching. This is what Jung referred to as complexes, clusters of emotional energy anchored in early experience. They live inside you like ghosts, not to haunt you, but to be noticed, remembered, resolved. These complexes shape your responses, your fears, your fatigue. They whisper to you in your most vulnerable moments. Don't slow down. You'll disappoint them. Don't rest. You haven't earned it. Don't feel. It's too much. And without realizing it, you begin to live out someone else's unlived life. Your exhaustion is not random. It's intelligent. It's the body's way of saying, I've been holding too much for too long. Holding back grief that was never processed. Holding guilt that was never yours. Holding emotional roles in a family system that never allowed you to be a child. You became the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the strong one, the one who held space for everyone but never had space held for you. And now your soul is starting to protest, through fatigue, through shutdown, through the quiet scream of I can't do this anymore. Jung believed in the power of making the unconscious conscious because until we do, we remain trapped in stories we didn't even choose. To become whole is to look at the tiredness and ask, whose is this? Is this pain mine or inherited? Am I living out my truth or repeating a pattern? Not all fatigue is yours. Some of it belongs to the generations that came before you. And you, with your awareness, your compassion, your willingness to slow down and feel, you are the one who can choose to stop carrying it forward. This doesn't mean blaming your family. It means becoming conscious of what you've been unconsciously loyal to. And that's hard, because sometimes fatigue feels safer than facing the truth. Sometimes it's easier to stay numb than to grieve what you never received. But in that grief is your freedom. You don't need to fix your tiredness. You need to witness it, to see it not as a flaw, but as a map leading you back to what has been abandoned or passed down or forgotten. Because hidden inside that exhaustion is a sacred message. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to return everything that was never meant for you to carry. What if your exhaustion isn't the end of something, but the beginning of something sacred? There comes a moment in life when nothing works anymore. The routines, the goals, the distractions, they all fall flat. You try to push yourself, to care, to keep up, but your soul has already left the room. What you're feeling isn't just burnout. It's not laziness, it's not failure. It's a sacred collapse. Carl Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the slow unraveling of everything that isn't truly you. Not as a punishment, but as an invitation. Because before the soul can awaken, the ego must surrender. And that surrender often looks like exhaustion, apathy, confusion, loss. Not because you're broken, but because the life you were living was never aligned with who you really are. This is why you feel like you're losing yourself, because you are. You're losing the self you created to survive, to impress, to feel in control, to be loved. But survival and awakening are two very different things. Survival is tight. Awakening is spacious. Survival is performing. Awakening is remembering, and the space between them. That's where the fatigue lives. There's a silence that follows burnout, a void. You don't feel inspired anymore. You don't want to read the books, hear the advice, follow the rules. Even healing feels like a burden, like just another thing you're supposed to be good at. This isn't a setback. It's the soul refusing to be forced, refusing to be optimized, refusing to be turned into another project. You're not supposed to feel motivated in this stage. You're supposed to feel empty, because something is dying, and in that death, a new self is being born. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. The pain of shedding masks, the pain of no longer fitting into your old life, the pain of facing all the feelings you buried just to keep going, and the pain of realizing you've been exhausted not because of who you are, but because of who you've had to pretend to be." This kind of burnout is not solved by sleeping more. It's solved by no longer betraying yourself, by letting go of expectations that were never truly yours, by grieving the life you thought you had to live to be worthy of love. You're not here to be impressive. You're here to be real. It's terrifying, isn't it? To let go, to not know what comes next, to admit that what used to work doesn't anymore. But in that terrifying stillness, there's a deeper intelligence at play. You're being emptied so that something truer can find you. The ego says, fix yourself. Hurry up, do more. The soul whispers, rest, break open, be still. And at some point, you'll realize that this exhaustion isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to return you to yourself. Not the version of you who can hustle through pain, but the one who remembers how to live without lying, how to feel without numbing, how to love without performance. And when the burnout has burned everything false, what remains is real. Not perfect, not polished, but present. And that's where the real journey begins. What if your tiredness isn't a barrier, but a doorway? At some point you stop trying to fix the tiredness. You stop seeing it as an error in the system. You start to wonder, what if this exhaustion has something to tell me? Because not all fatigue is meant to be cured. Some is meant to be heard. Carl Jung believed that the soul communicates not in logic or language, but in symptoms, symbols, and silence. And fatigue can be one of the clearest voices of the soul, not the kind that says you're weak, but the kind that gently asks, are you still living in alignment with your truth? You see, exhaustion is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it's a compass, pointing you away from the life that's draining you and towards something more authentic, more rooted, more real. But to hear it, you have to get quiet. You have to stop running. You have to stop performing, fixing, numbing, pleasing. You have to pause long enough to actually feel what your body has been trying to say for years. Maybe the tiredness is telling you that you've outgrown the role you're still trying to play, that your soul is no longer willing to stay in relationships where it has to hide, that you're not meant to keep pushing through a job that starves your spirit just to pay bills for a life that feels empty. Maybe your fatigue isn't a malfunction. Maybe it's an inner rebellion, a refusal to keep going in the wrong direction. There is a moment, often quiet, often in solitude, where you realize, I'm not tired because I'm broken. I'm tired because I've been betraying my own rhythm, the rhythm that knows when to rest, when to say no, when to walk away, when to stop trying to prove yourself to people who never really saw you. That rhythm lives deep in your body, under the noise, under the rules, under the trauma, and the only way back to it is through stillness. Jung understood this. He said the unconscious guides us through inner signs, through dreams, through discomfort. Not to punish, but to redirect. The fatigue you feel might not be an obstacle on your path. It might be the path. The soul doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it whispers through the body. Sometimes it rearranges your emotions. Sometimes it removes your motivation entirely so that you have no choice but to finally stop and listen. And when you do, you might hear something unexpected, a truth that's been waiting, a desire that's been buried, a no that was never said, a yes that's long overdue. This is what happens when fatigue becomes a compass, not a curse. You start living not by force, but by feel, not by expectation, but by essence. You start to let go of the performance and move toward presence. You don't need a better mindset, you need a better map. And sometimes that map begins with a body that no longer wants to cooperate because it knows you weren't meant to live this far from your own soul. You're not tired of life. You're tired of surviving a life that doesn't feel like yours. At some point, something inside you says, this can't be all there is. Not with this much fatigue, not with this much disconnection, not with this much silence between who you are and how you're living. And you realize you haven't been living. You've been enduring. Carl Jung didn't believe in just coping. He believed in the movement of the soul, what he called psychic energy, or libido. Not just sexual energy, but life force, the energy that animates your choices, your passions, your connection to meaning. When this energy flows freely, you feel alive, grounded, clear, not perfect, but real. But when it's blocked, you start to decay on the inside, not visibly, not catastrophically, but quietly. This is the kind of tiredness that comes from soul starvation, from living in survival mode for so long that joy feels suspicious. That stillness feels unsafe, that aliveness feels unreachable. Survival teaches you to stay alert, to anticipate rejection, to read the room instead of reading your heart, to scan for danger instead of scanning for beauty. And that scanning takes energy. You think you're exhausted because of everything you're doing, but the truth is, you're exhausted because of everything you're suppressing. Every yes you said when you meant no, every smile that masked your ache, every time you talked yourself out of wanting more. Your energy didn't disappear. It just got trapped in all the places you abandoned yourself to be accepted by others. Reclaiming your energy isn't about doing more. It's about choosing differently. It means letting go of identities that were built on fear. It means refusing to shrink so others can feel more comfortable. It means saying I'm no longer available for the kind of life that drains me just to survive. That decision, quiet as it may be, is a turning point. It's where individuation begins. Jung believed that individuation was the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, but whole. Not by fixing yourself, but by retrieving the parts of you that were silenced, ignored, or disowned. When you begin to live soulfully, you don't need to push. Energy comes from alignment, from meaning, from inner truth, not external performance. You begin to feel in your body what is nourishing and what is depleting. And the more you honor that, the less tired you become. Not because life gets easier, but because you're no longer leaking energy into false identities. You stop doing things just to be liked. You stop chasing what doesn't feed you. You stop tolerating people who only want access to your performance, but not your essence. You begin to protect your energy like it's sacred, because now you know it is. And in this protection, you grow powerful, not loud, not forceful, but rooted, grounded in who you are, energized by what's real, alive not because you finally did everything right, but because you stopped abandoning yourself. That is the shift, from survival to soulfulness. Your true energy doesn't come from doing more. It returns when the false self dies. There comes a moment where the exhaustion no longer scares you, because you've stopped resisting it, stopped trying to outrun it, and started recognizing it for what it truly was, a death. The death of the version of you that was created to survive. The performer, the pleaser, the one who held it all together at the cost of their own soul. And now, that version is dissolving. Carl Jung believed we don't become whole by adding more, but by letting go of what is not truly us. This tiredness, this inner collapse, wasn't failure. It was the quiet unraveling of an identity that was never rooted in your essence. And in its place, something softer arrives, a sense of breath, a flicker of calm, moments where the silence isn't frightening anymore but full of presence. You don't feel like you're back to normal, because the goal was never to go back. You begin to realize you're not recovering the old you. You're meeting the real you for the first time. Vitality returns slowly, not as motivation but as clarity, not as productivity but as peace. You stop pushing yourself to be better. You begin listening to the rhythm of your own nervous system. You begin protecting your mornings. You begin walking away from people who only want your mask, not your truth. This is the energy that comes after the old self dies. Not chaotic, not euphoric, but steady, sacred, real. You smile more not because you're pretending, but because your face has remembered how. You rest without guilt. You cry without shame. You say no without apology, because you're no longer available for the life that made you feel like you had to earn your own existence. Jung called this the return of psychic energy, once trapped in repression, in fear, in false identities, now flowing back to the self. Not the small self, but the true self, the one that existed before the pain, the one you're finally safe enough to return to. You are no longer living just to survive. You are no longer apologizing for being tired. You are learning that stillness is not failure. It's the beginning of presence, and presence is where real life happens. So if you've made it this far, if something in this message has felt like home, I want to say this to you. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not behind. You're awakening. And the exhaustion you felt was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of truth returning. If this journey has spoken to something real inside you, subscribe to this channel. Not for quick fixes, but for soul reminders you can return to again and again. And if you're walking through the undoing, holding yourself quietly through it all, leave a comment, even just the words, "Still here." Sometimes that's all we can say, and all we need to hear.